This week, I bumped into Elizabeth Letsoalo. Liz in her young life has started 2 companies, worked at 3 multinationals, and in her spare time is an active member of the World Economic Forum Global Shapers. Liz has been featured in Elle magazine and interviewed by ENCA and Afternoon Express, just to name a few. In this episode, we get into the details of starting a business. Like, how do you go about the hiring process?
I started in my immediate circle, and so did Shaz and Siwa start in their immediate circles and started looking for people they knew could do hair. So
we also touch on navigating corporate as a black female.
Corporate is all about a game. Again, you put your foot in the door, and after that it's like a whole different jungle where you have to, constantly prove yourself, or where you have to be liked. There's something called likability in corporates. It's a very common term. I don't know if you've come across it before.
And we also get to know Liz a bit more personally. What would you say is your superpower?
Confidence.
Why confidence?
Because it gets me in places that I naturally wouldn't go into.
She's literally living her ancestors' wildest dreams. Lovely people, boys and girls, please do enjoy this episode with Liz, who describes herself as a dream and a hope of a slave. Thank you for taking the time and welcoming me into your Van Sway home. And yeah, it does mean a lot to just have this time and to get to know you better and the business you've actually built, which we'll get to. But, to kick off, I'd love for you to just briefly introduce yourself to the listeners. And how I'd like you to do this is actually introduce yourself like your mother would be introducing you. So speak in third person, and she must, like your mother would say, "Oh, Liz," So yeah, how would your mother introduce you?
Oh my goodness. My mother. Okay. I think she would say that Liz is her youngest daughter, whom she has seen grow up. She does a lot of things, and she doesn't necessarily know the details of everything Liz is doing, but she shares in the journey of excitement and supports her fully on whatever journey she takes. As far as she understands, Liz is passionate about politics, she's passionate about business, and she's passionate about anything that gives her a platform to express herself and focus her energy on. Be it a new business idea, be it her job in corporates, be it a new book or family. I'm trying to really think about this from the context of my mother, and I limit the information simply because I don't think she would have a full view of the details of what Liz does. She probably thinks Liz is not doing that badly for herself. For no particular reason, simply because Liz is her daughter.
Okay. Yeah, okay, no, cool. That's fair enough. Just leading on from that, you said you're passionate about politics. What are your other passions that your mother would say that you have? Or just generally your friends and your family would say you have?
Yeah. Passionate about positive debates. I'm passionate about business, like I said. I'm passionate about people and connecting with people, relationships. I really put in my all, or take away my all. I'm passionate about youth in education. It's something I've dedicated most of my university life on. Teaching maths and sciences to young students between grade 10 and 12, simply because I enjoyed it and because I believed that they needed a helping hand, and I had the capacity. So it's difficult to say I'm passionate about one specific thing, simply because I feel like I'm that person who sees a new toy and I want to play around with it. So I literally just, whatever I take interest in, I go for it. Yeah.
So we're going to take a little bit of a break right now, and then we'll come back after the break just to dive more in, what is this word?
Deep dive.
No. Dwell.
Dive.
I'm trying to use big English words here. All right.
Oh, okay,
right.
okay.
Please.
I mean, I did English as my second language, so I can't help.
Okay, you know what? We'll come back to dive deeper into the life of Liz and the business.
Still
businesses.
Use the same word I suggested, but anyway.
The businesses she started. And you get a lot of people that say at the end of the degree that, look, it kind of sucks when you hear this after all the hard work, but a degree is just a piece of paper. You know, first, that's my first question. Do you actually agree with that statement? And then secondly, like, yeah, what value, which is obviously leading on from the first question, what value did you gain from the engineering degree that you did?
Yeah.
If any.
Yeah. I think on the first question of a degree is just a piece of paper, I don't necessarily agree with it, simply because there is a lot of time and a lot of years that are put into it. Yes, there's some things that don't necessarily work, systemic things that don't work, like, we are tested based on memory.
Sure.
How well can you remember this thing? Not necessarily on comprehension. But there are subjects or modules that actually test that. You know, for example, when I went to university, I had never done technical drawing in my life. I couldn't even visualize. I'm a horrible drawer, naturally. I couldn't even visualize some things that I had to draw. To have to do some of the things that I did, it opened up my ability to conceptualize and to communicate differently. I think I can communicate in images now, which was something I didn't know how to do before. I learned coding, programming, which was a skill that I didn't have before. I learned how to, you know, think statistically and numerically because of some of the modules that I'd taken. And I can say that some of the modules that I took, I felt like were quite a waste of time, but it wasn't all a waste of time. There was some value coming out of it. So I don't think it was really just a piece of paper. I do think a degree, though, helps you put your foot in the door.
I hate to do this, but sometimes we have to do it in terms of generalizing. I hate generalizing, but just for the sake of, you know, having this conversation, what do you think are the barriers that black people who are previously disadvantaged, obviously, as you know, have when they're going into corporate? And I'd like for you not to look at yourself. I mean, you didn't grow up in poverty, but you didn't grow up
well
rich
off. Yeah.
and wealthy. I'd like for you to look at it from a point of view of the masses. So the people that do make it through university, that study hard, that get the foot in the door and get the job, right? For whatever reason, you know, there might be, obviously there's BEE scores, which is another topic we can always discuss on another day. But we're in corporate now. What do you think are the barriers now, if we have to go to race, in terms of the barriers that black people are facing versus the same person who studied the same degree but is white, in your view? I mean, if you can just touch on, because I know it's probably a topic that might be close to your heart, you know. Maybe just touch on a few things that, as how I want you to do this, and it's up to you. Speak from a generalized point of view, and then also what you experience going into corporate, and then after that we'll just go into your corporate journey. Yeah,
I think that's a very touchy one. It's a bit close to home.
Now we're getting into it.
But I think of it in three ways. I think there's an issue of cultural difference. There's an issue of the benefit of the doubt, and then there's an issue of you know, I'm trying to think of a way to put this, but there's an issue of, just call it exposure or experience, privilege, exposure, whatever you want to call it. So on the cultural difference thing, corporate is all about, again, you put your foot in the door. And after that, it's like a whole different jungle where you have to, you know, constantly prove yourself, or where you have to be liked. There's something called likability in corporate. It's a very common term. I don't know if you've come across it before. Likability means do I like working with you, And likability for me is one of those things that are vague and that create room for prejudice to thrive in corporate.
But wouldn't you say that everyone, no matter your skin color, no matter your gender, faces those barriers? Obviously to a different degree, I guess.
Yeah. But where I'm getting at with the likability is that likability creates room for vague matrices to be put, because you can just say, let's rate Liz on a scale of 1 to 3. Okay, fine. Performance, maybe she's a 2. And then communication, maybe she's a 1. And likability, nobody knows what constitutes likability.
It seems very subjective.
Exactly. That's where my problem comes in, to say the moment we start saying likability, one can say, okay, fine, maybe it's a concoction of, are you pretty? Do you twang? Are you light-skinned if you're black? Or which race are you? It's those kind of things that are unspoken. The unspoken rules of corporate, of who do you greet? Which clique do you belong to? In corporate, do you do drinks? If you don't, you know what I mean? I mean, if you're non-alcoholic, then hey, sorry. Do you dance the most? Are you the life of the party when we have a year-end function, for example? Do you send that email thanking everyone for those reply to all kind? Do you CC so and so? It's those kind of things. And where I'm getting at is that this links very much to the culture of how we interact with people, or how we interact with broader communities. In the black communities, normally you don't self-praise. Yeah, okay. You don't sing your own praise. You don't stand on the top of a mountain and say, "Look at what I did."
Okay.
But in corporate, is the other side. When you've done something, you even claim other people's success. Have you ever seen somebody take credit for your work? And
it happens.
It happens, right? And
which reminds me, actually, I need to. Yeah.
So it's those things where, because of cultural differences, there's certain cultures that are more closer, or that corporate is tailored after. And those cultures aren't mostly black people cultures, which is why it's difficult for us to fully be ourselves in corporate and thrive. If you are not being yourself, it's tiring, because you go there, you put on a cloth, and then, you play the game, and then you come back home tired as hell. Or if you try and be yourself because you don't want to come home exhausted from not being yourself, then you just lose out, because, you're not going to self-praise? Tough, I'll take your credit and run with it. And watch me do it without shame. So that was the first element. The second element we spoke about, what was it? The exposure, where it's not a myth that most white kids go to far better schools than and better meaning well equipped. They have textbooks delivered on time. They have meaningful school trips that are quite expensive, and that many people who aren't necessarily privileged can't afford. So when they have sports, like different kinds of sports. So in high school, by the time you're like 15, you either know you want to be a swimmer, you want to do cricket, you want to... Tina, like in school, it's either football or netball. Pretty common, right? For most government schools, really. So the opportunities for us to be in different fields is not there. And when you go into corporate again, you have people who play golf as a sport. You have people who, play tennis, with the clients. What do you know? You know soccer winner. How many clients play? Have you ever heard a client say, I'm going to go play soccer? No, simply because, not necessarily because soccer is not a prestigious sport. It is, and it's wonderful. But the culture of corporate is not always aligned with black people activities. Sure. We don't go to Shisanyama. We go to high-end restaurants and bars to entertain our clients and our colleagues. And that's literally what it is. Oftentimes, black people skills and what they're good at isn't easily exposed, simply because it's not aligned or it's not embedded in the corporate culture.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there was a third one.
There was a third one, which I've forgotten. Remind me, please.
I'm also trying to remember, because I have exposure down here. Okay, no, but I get the gist of it.
Yeah.
Which obviously has a knock-on effect in terms of when you start corporate, you can start almost, you have a lot of catching up to do. And unfortunately, that means you'll never really catch up. Or if you are, you'd have to work twice as hard, put up a lot of facades. You're just disadvantaged when you start.
Exactly. Even when you're in it, because you see people who are successful, well, in the context of corporate and what it stands for, or what they believe success is for them. You still see them try so much to, because it's like, it's a black person who's not, and I'm not speaking on behalf of all black people here, I'm going to speak for myself. As a black person who loves house music, who loves, eating bab in mohodu and all of those things, the moment I go into corporate, if we have, a year-end function, it's never a bab in mohodu and shisanyama kind of vibe. It's always a sort of like Western culture inclined, whether you are senior or you are junior, you still go through the same thing, because a corporate is bigger than just one person. So where I'm getting at is that it's not necessarily something you have to overcome at the beginning of your career. It's there with you throughout your corporate career as someone who doesn't relate. One of two things. One, you either adapt and you adopt that culture as your own and you fully embrace it, and then you can perhaps enjoy it more. Or two, you embrace your own culture and you feel like you have to live a double life.
Sure.
The work Liz is not necessarily the same as the Liz at home. The Liz at home likes to sit and drink macheu. The Liz at work, wants to have these fancy drinks, champagnes and stuff. Maybe she doesn't like it, but hey, if you don't like it, then you don't look cool. Good luck getting that promotion.
Okay. So, we're going through your corporate journey, right? You've been obviously with some great companies that other people would obviously kill for, right? But we're all on our own journey, with our different dreams and goals. So now I'd like to understand where in your corporate journey, was it year 1, year 2, where you wanted to branch out or start your own shandies, set up your own shop, where was the itch coming from? When did the itch actually come? Let me start there.
Yeah, so I started working in 2014 and work felt very uncomfortable for me. There was this weird feeling of, when it doesn't feel right and you look around and you look at everyone seems comfortable, and I thought the problem was with me. I remember the first few weeks thinking, is this all I'm meant to be doing? Something's missing. This can't be my job. There has to be more. But I was ashamed to say it because people seemed to be on top of their game and people seemed to be enjoying and embracing their roles. And it felt like something was completely wrong with me, and I completely kept quiet about it. And I think the discomfort grew over time, where it felt very, very uncomfortable and very unnatural for me to be where I was and to be doing what I was doing. And obviously the next thing that I started thinking about was, I think I can only be my savior. I don't know. The more you start talking to different people in different corporates, they feel the same way. You're like, oh, so clearly there's no...
So basically jumping ship is not going to solve the problem.
It's not going to solve the problem. You're just going to jump to the same thing, maybe in a different color, for example. And I started realizing maybe I just need to do my own thing.
So what was your first venture? And what made you go into that venture?
Oh my God, my first venture was Good Hair. And I love that business. I love it to bits. What made me go into it was a culmination of different reasons. One, I had two fantastic friends whom I love to the core. And we shared this vision of wanting to do something independently. And, I thought we were all smart and capable, and we were all ethical and aligned in terms of what we could do. I knew I could trust them, and I believe they trusted me too. And I was like, you know what? If there's anyone to go into business with, it's these two ladies.
Sure.
That's Shaz and Siwe, two of my really, really good friends. The second thing that inspired it was that we left the first company that we met at. All three of us were working for the same company, and all of us left. And once we left, we had been having discussions of we need to stop just serving lip service and actually start putting our our thoughts into action. And there was a sense of pride that said we're gonna be like the rest of the people who are out there complaining and not doing anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
There was always that sense of self-exceptionalism, that we're different, which I've come to think it's actually not that exceptional. We're just a bunch of dreamers with valid dreams, as valid as everyone else's. But I think there was a sense of not necessarily guilt, but pride that said if we don't put this into action, then it means we've just been speaking in vain. And then we committed and we said, let's do it. And we did it.
Lovely. Which is, okay. Very interesting, actually. And I've always been interested in terms of, when you listen to a lot of interviews with entrepreneurs, they talk about their successes, but I always want to get into the grimy, dirty details. So, for example, like when it came time to hiring, and before I get there, just for the listeners, what is good hair? As an elevator pitch, we didn't even get there, because I know what good hair is, but some people might not know.
So I don't know if that's a fair question for me to ask, because good hair is a very brilliant entity that is continuously evolving.
Well, at the time when you're starting, what was good hair?
At the time, good hair was basically a business that wanted to empower women of color through giving them a service that they deserve, that was going to reinforce their sense of confidence and sense of self-worth, simply because women of color have mostly been neglected, especially in the beauty industry, because of the conditions that they're subjected to in beauty spaces. So Good Hair wanted to empower women by freeing more of their time. To say, I'll come to your house and I'll do your hair from the comfort of your home or your office or wherever you are, and I'll give you a stellar service, and I'll stick to my time commitments, and I will give you the certainty of the starting time and the ending time, such that you can plan your time accordingly. It was more of paying homage to black women who deserved the best of what this world has to offer, and understanding really the historical politics of hair and the physics of hair, to say beauty has always been pain. Why does it have to be pain for black women and not necessarily for other women? Black is not always beautiful and Afro is not always beautiful. Why was that necessarily the case? So it was more of an intersection of different topics, politics, beauty, success, sense of self-worth, and so forth. And that was the intention of it. It probably has evolved into something probably more advanced, something definitely better today, because it's continuously growing, it's continuously running, and I don't have that sight of what is going on today. So I don't want to speak for Good Hair.
Okay, no, fair enough. And in terms of deciding, how do you go about deciding who to hire, how to hire? Where did you start? Was it Google or you on Gumtree? I'm just very interested in that. I mean, because everyone speaks get employees. How do you get employees? Did you use services that are available already?
Yeah. So embedded in the Good Hair model was the issue of trust.
Okay.
Every woman or every man who has a beautician, a hairstylist, a hairdresser, whatever, wants to form a bond, a connection, or have some chemistry of sorts with their hairdresser. And the thinking was that I for the same reason why I wouldn't go to any random person and say, hey, do you know how to braid hair? Yes. Oh, braid my hair. I don't want to do that to people. So I started in my immediate circle, and so did Shaz and Siwa start in their immediate circles and started looking for people they knew could do hair. So a lady by the name of Anna, who has been doing my hair for a very long time. In fact, I would call her and she would come to my house and do my hair. I said, why don't you come on board? Because I trust you, and therefore I trust that I can put you on this platform to make other women look good.
So she was employee number one.
So she was the person number one. Number two was a fantastic lady called Connie, who was also a friend's hairstylist. I saw the friend's hair. I was like, girl, you look good. Who did your hair? She was like, girl, Connie. I was like, give me Connie's numbers. And I talked to Connie and she came on board and she was fantastic. So that's literally how we try to recruit for good hair. We didn't necessarily do it, the theoretical route of who recruitment call.
CV
it
or
was
whatever.
more of, I see your hair, I like it, who did it, we're going to get them on board kind of thing.
And the way you were situated, I mean, the way you positioned yourself, was more of a premium business, right?
Yeah.
And just take me through how you came up with your price structure. Look, I don't do my hair, but you look at those prices, and I know you're a premium business, but I've cut my hair at a salon. I've accompanied my wife, accompanied my wife, to the salon. And you generally have an idea of the prices of hair, right? How did, number one, you come up with your pricing, and why? I know you're a premium product, but what made you 20% more, 30% more of the market? And secondly, how did the market receive it?
So the tricky thing about the pricing is that there was no, as far as we knew, there was no good hair at the time that you could compare our prices to. So what we said was that, okay, fine, are we going to do a market related pricing and then price it up? Or are we going to do a bottom up sort of like pricing to say, what's our costs? What margin are we hoping to achieve? And let's price it that way. And what we tried to do was to say, okay, fine, we're a high-end salon. Let's look at what salons in high-end areas, so areas we regard as high-end, or who target the same target market that we're going for, are charging. So we looked at your Santons and your Rosebanks and, your Bryanstons and so forth. And we said, okay, fine, how much are these people charging? Again, the tricky thing is that when you go into a fresh business and you're trying to penetrate a new market, you always stuck between, okay, fine, there's a position that I need to take and say I'm really high end and I'm going to stick with it. But there's also an opportunity for me to like go a bit down and have a higher penetration, for example. So it was more of the discussion that was back and forth to say, how do we do this? And the one way we said we would do this was to say, let's price it dynamically. But the dynamic pricing based on locations and based on the distance traveled by a stylist would require an app.
Okay.
Which was quite something we didn't necessarily have the financial positioning to achieve at the time. So what we would do then was to go for a fixed pricing or a static pricing model for the time being, which was mostly structured around what the prices around the high-end areas or the target market areas that we wanted to go for were priced at.
Just a quick one before I forget, whilst we're still on good hair.
Yes.
You guys got a lot of PR for a startup, that even multinationals would love. So just just take us through, what is your first PR gig that really you started to say, okay, no, cool, mama,
we made it.
We're going into the big leagues now. Do you know what I mean?
Man.
And what was it? And then how, if you can share it, like how did you land that gig?
So it was Afternoon Express on SABC3.
All right.
We were all so excited. So it was in Cape Town, and I had to fly down to Cape Town for it. And I remember we took lots of pictures. It's like one of the most memorable days of my life because we're just all so excited. We're like, guys, we did it, you know. And how I think we've landed it was because, you know, Shares knew someone who was actually asking around for, you know, we're doing this thing about entrepreneurship and women and ventures. And she was like, actually, this is what we're doing. So Shares actually was our lead to that breakthrough. And we got on there and we had an amazing time. But I think just thinking more about PR, we were actually very fortunate to be connected to, not even connected actually, we reached out to people in media. And things just happened. I guess maybe the idea was exciting because before we knew it, we were in Elle magazine.
Oh, wow.
Before we knew it, we were on Power FM. And, you know, we're in like different spaces where we're just doing a few interviews and we got a bit of coverage. So that was a bit exciting for us to.
I've never actually even asked you about your marketing. So besides the PR, how did you guys go about marketing your company and your services?
How we went about our marketing was mostly through social media. We had an Instagram page, we had a Facebook page, and we have a Twitter page, which we were hoping would reach the target market, obviously, you know, middle class to higher class, for the lack of a better phrase, excuse my English, Black women predominantly, who didn't mind spending an extra $1 to get their hair done in the comfort of their home. And we thought that the best place to find those women are on social media because these are the same people who are tweeting about, you know, vacations and, you know, getting their nails done and shopping and so forth. I think what we also tried to do through the PR was to diversify our reach. Sure. To say there's a world where you reach your people through radio, you reach to people through, you know, TV and so forth, and that's what we're trying to achieve. But I think as a new business, it's always very tricky to, you know, balance the trade-off between spending a lot of money and improvising on the marketing, because we didn't really have that much money to splash on marketing. For example, just printing flyers was a luxury for us, and as much as we could do that, where exactly do you distribute flyers these days? It's just a very tricky thing, right? So we were still in the phase of exploring different marketing strategies. And I think up until the time I left, we predominantly used social media and relied a lot on the PR partners that we had to get the word out there.
Hey fellow rockstars, thank you for sticking with me thus far. And I trust you are enjoying this interview as much as I enjoyed interviewing. This is a snippet of what's to come after the break.
When we launched with a bang. I was overwhelmed. I didn't expect that kind of revenue. You know, and what we have managed to do was to stay on that route. So we've been quite consistent.
What are 3 things or 3 truths you'd love to leave with the world that are close to your heart?
Oh, okay. That's hard. 1, listen to your internal GPS.
All right, cool. Welcome back. This is part 3, and yeah, man. So now we here. We 2018, and before we go into the business, the lovely beauty business that you've started, I just want to take this moment in time to just reflect, right, in terms of what you've been through. So for a woman out there, I mean, you are working corporate right now, you are a business owner, entrepreneur, and you were at one point, and still are actually, studying at the same time. I just want to briefly touch on that. Like, you're being stretched 3 ways in terms of career, if you want to call it that, over and above having needs. I'm assuming, I mean, since you're such a beautiful lady, you're dating someone, you have a man in your life, so you have your relationship aspects, but in the relationships you also have your family. What I'm trying to get, how do you do it? Because this is borderline superwoman. tendencies?
It's crazy because it doesn't feel like it sometimes. So how do I do it? I'm trying to honestly think, how do I do it? It's a lot of long hours. But I think so. Normally, what a typical day for me looks like is get to the office maybe between 8:30 and 9 in the morning, and then be out of the office be done with like work around 10 on a good day, sometimes 12 too.
Wow.
On a not so good day. I think I have a lot of support. It would be quite selfish to take all the credit to myself and just run with it. I have a lot of support, and I have a wonderful family, wonderful partner, great friends, and I as much as I don't always ask for help, sometimes they do help. Maybe a small thing is happening, please do this for me, or please help me with this. It really does go a long way. But I think with the studying thing, it's always something you just find a weekend. All you need is to find like 2 weekends and bang it out. Bang out all the assignments. And, so lucky enough for me, I'm more of an introvert, and I don't think that many people are aware of it. But I'm quite an introvert, and I like spending my free time with myself. So that time, sometimes I'll use it to, do my assignments or prep for my exams and so forth when I'm studying. Business for me is it's a part of who I am. It's a part of life. It doesn't feel like there's a business time and there's a work time. And I'll give you an example. I'll get an order for some products, wherever I am. If I'm at lunch, I will easily book a delivery over lunch, for this particular order. Or if I get a query, I'll respond to the query during coffee or something like that. So for me, I'm always on the move. I'm always doing many things at the same time. And there's the upside and the downside of that. The upside is that, I make the most of my time, and I'm always doing something valuable with my time. Even when I'm sitting at home watching a movie, if an order comes through, I will take it and I will take care of it. If a query comes through, I will pause my movie, I will continue. But I guess the downside is that sometimes you miss out on experiencing other things fully, because, you're somewhat split between where you are in the business. And sometimes
So it's almost like you're sacrificing.
Exactly.
And what are you sacrificing?
I think what do I sacrifice? It doesn't feel like, because I feel like sacrifice is like I'm foregoing something to gain something. It doesn't feel like I'm foregoing anything. What it feels like is more of that I'm split. I can be in many places at once. And what that robs me of or deprives me of is of the opportunity to experience other things in their fullness.
Sure.
For example, I'm watching a movie and an order comes through, a query comes through, and I pause the movie, and then
business comes first, right?
I pause the movie continues, but I'm watching the movie and I'm responding at the same time. So it sometimes deprives me of the opportunity to be fully present in some moments or some instances. And that's the...
Is that important to you?
It is important to me, obviously, because I don't want to live half life here, half life there.
Sure.
But what I have decided for myself is that, when I'm starting a business and I don't have the financial muscle to employ many people, it means that I have to do some of the heavy lifting myself. And this is just it comes with the territory of starting a business. And if I'm starting a business and I want to push and thrive, there's some small things that I need to forego. The one thing that I hope for, and I'm trying to make sure that doesn't happen, is that I don't get caught up in the workaholic culture of losing touch with, my loved ones and missing out on important moments simply because I'm trying to push. I just hope that I'm aware that I need to push up until a certain point. When I get to a point where I can start employing people to actually do the pushing in their various fields, they can do that, and I can sort of like step back and get back into my fullness, I guess.
Let's go to Masodi,
right?
That's how you pronounce it, right?
Masodi. Yes.
The Zulu in me. Masodi.
Yes.
Masodi Organics. take me through, what is this an idea you've actually always had, or did it just come out like a flash in a pan, like, let me just do this, do you know what I mean? And why the beauty space, considering it's a red ocean as well? Red ocean meaning that there's a lot of competitors and people that are doing those products.
I think for me, so two things. The first thing is that obviously I started working in a space that was more around beauty, among other things. And beauty has always been something that resonated with me. I liked hair, I liked, trying out different products and so forth. But I think the second reason, and I guess a more honest reason, was that I was coming out of a business that was in the same industry. So a more natural space for me to look into for opportunity was within the same industry. So coming out of good hair, hungry for something else and something to try that was easier, I guess, to manage and much more, much more executionable for me, at least for one person show in the short term space. Masodi made a lot of sense, so for me it was more of a natural move from good hair to Masodi Organic. It's a red ocean, I agree. Lots of players in the field, but I guess my intention is not necessarily to go into the industry or to go into the space to be the only one. It's to say, for a very long time, you would walk into a beauty store and all you would see on the shelves would be Caucasian beauty products. And, for quite some time, I myself used Caucasian hair shampoos and Caucasian, hair moisturizers and so forth. They didn't necessarily have to either work or not work for me, but I couldn't connect with them. I felt like there wasn't anything there for me. And I think for me, the beauty of choice is actually something beautiful. We don't have to be shy to join spaces or to go into spaces that are already full simply because, there's someone there. There is someone there, but what if man A doesn't like that product? Where do they go? The nice thing about beauty is that you want to switch things up. I know that in my cupboard growing up, I always had probably 3-4 different brands of hair care products. Shampoo, I prefer this brand. Hair moisturizer, I prefer that one, So that's the kind of movement I believe I'm joining with Masodi Organic products.
Wow. And again, similar to Good Hair, from idea to shipping to trade, like launching, how long did it take you?
Crazy.
Because I know, from the research that I did, it was very instantaneous and very fast to get into market. Just elaborate on that.
It was a very, very short time. I'm not even going to say how short it was. So, because I've always been interested in that kind of thing, I would always do my own research and read up on these things. So I always knew how I would do the products or how I would make the products and get them out there. I think in the back of my mind, Masodi has always been somewhere there. I knew, which is why it honestly didn't take me more than a month to launch Masodi. Simply because the idea had always been in the back of my mind, marinating. I knew the packaging, what it would look like.
Oh, wow.
I knew how I would make the products. I knew the ingredients that I needed. The only thing that I wanted to do was to, do a thorough testing of the products and so forth. So I did some testing of the products. I even did it prior to, but by the time when I launched, I actually went out in the market at a time where I wasn't meant to go out, simply because I'd done, I guess, quite decently in marketing, that people were already placing orders. I was meant to go and launch on the 1st of September 2018, and by sometime mid-August, orders were already flowing in. I was getting overwhelmed, and I thought, I'm confident in this product. I've tried it myself. Sure. Let me just get it out there. And if there's anything to, improve in terms of branding, in terms of the name, I'll just evolve and let the people evolve with it as it goes. And that's literally what happened.
Just based on that, so I'm just trying to see how I'm gonna structure these, because there have been questions coming out of there. So let's just go back to basics. The name, Masodi, right? How did you come up with it? It's a very interesting, very vernac What does it mean, number one, and how did you come up with the name?
So I'm trying to think about, the name was quite an easy one to come with. This is named after my mother.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Masudi is my mother's name, who has been a role model of mine for the longest time. And I felt that this was my way of honoring her as my mother, and I think the amazing job she's done as a mother and as a woman and as a leader and as a human being in the world. You know, I think she's done a lot, and I just wanted to find a way to honor her, and I thought what better way to do that than to do it with this.
I mean, it's amazing when you say the orders, I mean, came in, whether you want to call it the luck of the draw or just your pure genius, you know, and the brand that you hold as Liz Letsoalo. How did you do your marketing?
Again, I went back to what I knew and what I've learned from Good Hair. I think social media is quite some equity that I think, or that I hope actually many of us are aware of.
Sure.
I used a lot of my social media to market it. And I think obviously thanks to family and friends, you know, family and friends are the first people to buy your product. Out of loyalty, they don't necessarily have to believe in it. They just buy it because go girl. But you know, one of the most exciting things for me is seeing somebody come back, because I'm like, oh really? It means that loyalty, because you bought because you're my friends and you bought because you like family to me. That's fine. I get it. I appreciate the support. But when you come back again, it's like, okay, maybe you like it, you know?
I know you have an engineering background, but you don't really have a chemistry background, if you want to call it that, or a beauty background in terms of formulations, R&D, etc. Are you the formulator?
I am.
And what did you do your research in terms of how to come up with a body butter, for example? How much of X ingredients? Obviously, we're never going to reveal the ingredients that you're going to be using in all of it, but you just did your research, and then what, you experimented?
I can tell you right now that all the information you need is out there somewhere. How many PhD theses, I don't know whether it's thesis or thesis, are there for us to read?
Sure.
How many, you know, I mean, even if you just grab an ordinary product, just look at the packaging, it's written ingredients. There is so many papers and so many depositories of knowledge that we can draw from. And I think the somewhat obsession on, you know, degrees and qualifications sometimes steers us away from real knowledge. I don't know if the people in some big corporates are actually, the big corporate name, like the brothers, were necessarily qualified in some of the formulations that they did. I think for me, the main thing is ensuring three things. One, my products are safe to use for people. They're not going to endanger people's lives. Two, my products actually work. They deliver what they say they will deliver, which is something you can research on different papers and different, you know, platforms and different information and organizations that actually offer support in institutionalized organizations, actually. And three, are my products sustainable in terms of the environment? Am I killing animals, and am I, you know, chopping down lots of trees and so forth to get my products? And am I transporting them over a long distance and so forth? So I think for me, ticking these three boxes to say, are people satisfied? Are people safe? And is the environment safe? For me, matters.
And now, in terms of obviously Masadi, so it's been what?
2.5 months.
2.5 months, right?
It's absolutely crazy.
It's crazy, man.
It's crazy, man.
and in terms of traction, are you growing month on month? You know.
But if you're asking about sales and revenues, I think we are flat.
Sure.
And flat, not necessarily even in a negative way, but to say, when we launched with a bang. I was overwhelmed. I didn't expect that kind of revenue. You know, and what we have managed to do was to stay on that route. So we've been quite consistent. And for me, that actually means a lot, because I'm not going to measure myself on, how much growth am I going? And I'll tell you why. it probably takes about 3 months for a customer to return to buy again, because that's around about how much our products need to last you for.
Sure.
So it means over the past 2.5 months, we've been getting new customers each month, basically.
Yeah.
And for me, that is actually growth, if you think of it that way. But if you think of it traditionally in terms of, month on month, sort of like growth, how much did I grow in comparison to last month, then you won't necessarily see that. But someone who's bought in, September is not necessarily going to come back in October to buy again. They'll wait for, October and November and probably come back in December. So that's how I measure my growth. And I think based on that, we've been doing quite well and quite better than I honestly had anticipated. So I think the reception we've received was quite great.
I want to know now, from your experience with Good Hair and Masadi, what was your initial view in terms of being an entrepreneur, right? Before you got your hands dirty? And what was the reality now in December 2018? Like, I'm just trying to figure out the gap, so listeners can know that if you haven't started a business, you might have these preconceived ideas of being an entrepreneur and being a businesswoman, and what is the reality?
I think for me, the preconception of it was pretty much because I'm a bit of a realist in life. I'll try to see things realistically and I'll plan for worst case scenario. So I didn't necessarily think it was all rosy and like, pink and shiny before I got into it. But I would say the one thing I have learned in entrepreneurship is that there's always tough decisions to be made. And you don't necessarily have to be a bad person to make some decisions. You just have to be clear-minded and very decisive.
So let me just be clear on this. Like, before you entered business, you didn't think there'd be many tough decisions to be made? Did you know there's going to be tough decisions?
I knew, but the reality of it felt different.
Okay.
So I knew there would be tough decisions to be made, but for example, I didn't know, well, I couldn't have pre-felt, for the lack of a better phrase, I couldn't have pre-felt how would it feel to maybe not agree with someone's work and say I have to either let you go or I'm not happy with your work, this is not what I wanted, kind of thing. Especially because as a young person in business who doesn't necessarily have the financial muscle to flex, you end up going for people who are most likely friends, family, or close people, acquaintances, to be your business partners. So when you're designing a website, or when you're getting a hairstylist, or when you are getting someone to help you with your marketing strategy, or when you're procuring your raw materials, for example, it's normally always people within your network, isn't it? Simply because you're not big enough to walk into a big corporation and say, hey, provide me with some bottles.
Oh, wow.
Because who are you? Why do you want bottles from us? So oftentimes as a small business, you have to interact with people within your network.
Sure.
And when things start going south, you need to be well equipped or ready or willing to have difficult conversations. And that's not necessarily something that I had prepared myself for, simply because how I thought of business was purely business is business. I will have, suppliers, I will have customers, but I didn't think of suppliers and customers and partners as my friends or as my acquaintances. So I thought, no, if you're not performing, I will let you go. I will part ways with you respectfully. But I never thought, this could be an acquaintance or this could be my sister. Then what do you do, So I think for me, that was the learning to say, it's highly beneficial to have people within your networks to do business with. The difficult thing is that if things go south, then you need to be ready to honestly and fully and unashamedly have tough conversations. And hopefully still manage to salvage the relationship.
And just on the business side, to close it off, what has been your biggest learning?
What has been my biggest learning? Just do it. Honestly.
Oh, wow.
If you wait for a perfect moment, you will never do anything. Had I waited for Masodi to be a perfect idea, I would never have done it.
All right, so now look, I want to close off this interview because we're running out of time with coming just back to your personal life. And the reason for this is just to understand more of you, and I'm hoping the listeners will get what they'll get from it is by understanding more of you, how it's inspired you to start obviously all of these businesses, you know. And you're getting ready to trust me, I'm not gonna ask that deep question. Jeez. So look, I want to know, first question, you know, what would you say is your superpower?
Confidence.
Why confidence?
Because it gets me in places that I naturally wouldn't go into.
Example?
Masuri Organic. I don't have to be an expert in beauty. I don't have to be an expert in formulation. I don't have to be an expert in running a business, but I do it because I believe in myself and I think that I can do it and I should be able to do it, and I do it.
All right. And cool, you confident. Okay, I wouldn't disagree with that. Confidence and borderline.
Don't say that.
Borderline strong women. That's what I was gonna say. Hey.
I saw that coming.
Arrogance. What? No.
Oh, man.
I'm joking. So okay, and I've heard that you're a very avid book reader as well, you know. In the spare time that you do get, if you do ever get that during the year, you know, I know your downtime and your leisure time is about reading and expanding your knowledge, which is what I've been told, and following your...
Told by who?
I cannot reveal my sources at this point in time. I'd love to know 3 books you would recommend to the world, actually.
Oh my god, that's it. Don't say 3. Okay, fine. I'm probably going to speak about authors rather than books. One, Chinua Achebe is one of my... he's my grandfather. He doesn't know it well. Rest in peace, but he's my grandfather. And from Chinua, my biggest thing that I like about him is that he's authentic. You know, he's not like cute authentic. He truly is authentic. You know, when he writes about Nigeria and when he writes about his experience as a native Nigerian man, he writes about that life. He makes you fall in love with being African, and you love it, and you see its legitimacy. You know, Africanism doesn't always have legitimacy. It's like, why are you guys sitting over there lazy? Yeah. But everybody must read Chinua. He is...
Give me one book to read.
I think start with the most popular one, Things Fall Apart.
Sure.
It's a very popular one. I mean, there's Arrow of God. There's it's a trilogy. Arrow of God, Things Fall Apart, and A Man of God or something of sorts. Can't remember it. But they are amazing books. I've read them.
All right.
The second author that I like is Henry C. Cloud. I've actually only read one of his books which captured my heart.
Which was?
Never Turn Back. And Never Turn Back was one of those books that unpacks the issue of patterns in lives. Why you should, when you leave something, why do you leave it? But if you decide to go back, why do you go back to it? For me, it was just a book full of lessons.
Sure.
That I think are necessary for adulthood.
Sure.
If I broke up with you and I decide to get back together with you, why am I getting back together with you? Is it because you, 1, have changed? 2, have I changed my attitude towards the thing that bothered me about you? Or 3, has, something about the whole situation changed? It's like that kind of thing. It was just a very rich book that I read. I was probably a bit younger when I read it. Probably need to revisit it, but I thought it was a very rich book. The third author that I like, and I'm torn between Khalid Hosseini and Ian Levanzant. I'll probably go for Khalid because he's a heartbreakingly talented author.
Sure.
That gives you, that teaches you how to self-express. Gives you the vocab to explain things you didn't know how to explain before. He writes catastrophe and disaster and tragedy in a very romantic way. But he also wakes you up to the reality of life's imperfections and the fact that there isn't always happy endings to everything. Some stories have happy endings, some stories don't have happy endings. Some stories are tragic, some are beautiful.
So he's a novelist.
He is. So he wrote Kite Runner, he wrote 1,000 Splendid Suns, he wrote And the Mountains Echoed. These are the 3 main books he wrote. Recently he dropped a small poetry book about the refugee child, the Syrian refugee child who was drowning, who was washed ashore in the sea, the one with the red top. I can't remember the title, but I read the book. It was very short. You read it in minutes. But he's an amazing writer, and he wakes up to the realities of life and its tragedies and its beauties. And if you're a one-sided or minded person, he balances your thinking out. If you're too cynical, he makes you hopeful. If you're too hopeful, he blends a bit of cynicism in you.
Oh, wow. Okay. And my final question, which I think is going to be very fitting, and again, I just want to thank you for your time. It's been quite a interesting interview for me. I hope you've also enjoyed it, but
absolutely
also, long, and I know you're tired, and
I'm not tired. I can still go on.
Yeah, you like talking, and you got things to do.
Oh, but
So I think it would be a question I'd like to ask, and where this comes from, and I'm not even trying to hug the spotlight, if you want to call it that. It's from one of my books, leading on from your books that you're saying, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the habits that they speak about is obviously beginning with the end in mind. Simply put, it's almost like, what do you want people to say about you at your eulogy, right? Which is not my question, for me, why it's important is, once you have the end, you can almost backtrack to say, okay, how do I reach that end? And you can do things now to live out that legacy that you want to live. But anyways, it's a long-winded way of me asking this question. Liz, now, you're 27 years of age. You've had a very fulfilled life, different experiences, ups and downs, corporates, starting new businesses, Say for some reason that gets all wiped away. All your work, all your businesses, all your degrees, that does not exist. If it was like in a building and all burns away, the only thing you have is your word, right? So this is called the 3 truths you'd love to leave with the world. So I'd love to know, everything's gone, your businesses and whatever, what are 3 things or 3 truths you'd love to leave with the world that are close to your heart?
Oh, okay, that's hard. 1, listen to your internal GPS. Like, again, to the issue of when something feels good, go for it. When something feels uncomfortable to you, that's your soul telling you that that thing is not connected to you. Listen to that and trust that.
So your instinct, you can.
Yeah, exactly. Even if it doesn't align to what the norm is out there. 2, many people don't know what they're doing. I tell you right now, millionaires, billionaires, big people, CEOs, presidents, many people are clueless about what they're doing. They're just winging it. Wing along too. Don't be left behind because you're you feel like an imposter. Wing along too. Now we get in there and just do it. Like, nobody really feels like they know exactly what they're doing.
Okay.
And be curious. Keep going, feel confident,
wing
it, and improve as you go.
Number 2, okay. Number 3.
The last one would be, always be honest. And where this is coming from is, for example, you look at the amount of corruption that's going on in the world, or say in South Africa, bring it home. These corrupt people are our uncles, our mothers, our brothers, our sisters, our wives, our husbands. Very seldom you hear a wife or a loved one say, actually, my loved one is a problem. It's always other people, but never our loved ones. Oh, my mother is having so much impact. Oh, my wife has done 1, 2, 3. Even if we see they're shady, oftentimes we don't call it out because they're our loved ones. I would want my daughter, my son, my loved one, my friend, my husband, whoever, to be honest enough to say, actually, beloved, you are being corrupt. And that's how we start fixing the world.
Okay. I'm floored by that. It takes a lot of courage.
It does, but it takes a lot of truth as well. You see your mother steal, but because you get that pocket money and you get to ride in the backseat of that nice sedan German car.
So honesty is one of your values, clearly.
Honesty is like there at the top.
Liz, it's been awesome.
It's been awesome! It's crazy, man!
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the time to actually interview this phenomenal woman. And I know this won't be the last time I'm interviewing you. I'm going to interview you as you grow, man. I'm really interested to see your journey and where it lands you up. Because as you said, we don't know what we're doing, so we'll see. We'll wing it,
We're just winging it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.